Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the March Technical Committee meeting. Members, please turn your cameras on during the roll call and also for the voting items. This meeting is being recorded. If anyone should experience difficulties during the meeting, please send a message to the chat box. At this time, Rebecca will start the roll call to determine member participation. Rebecca?
Morning, everyone. City of Annapolis,
Present.
Anne Arundel County,
Here.
Baltimore City,
Present.
Baltimore County,
Here.
Carroll County, Harford County,
Here.
Howard County,
Here.
Queen Anne's County,
Here.
MDOT,
Here.
MDE,
Here.
MDP,
Here.
MDOT MTA.
I'm here.
Thank you. MDOT SHA. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Rebecca. Our first item is approval of the minutes from the technical committee meeting in February. Have members had a chance to review the minutes? Can I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
Harford County will move to approve the February minutes.
Thank you, Harford County. Can I get a second?
Baltimore City seconds.
Thank you, Baltimore City. We will now vote on approval of the minutes. When your name is read, please indicate aye or nay. Rebecca, can you please read down the list?
Anne Arundel County,
Aye.
Baltimore City,
Aye.
Baltimore County,
Aye.
Carroll County, Harford County,
Aye.
Howard County,
Aye.
Queen Anne's County,
Aye.
and MDOT.
Aye.
Thank you.
Annapolis is here. You forget to mention Annapolis, Rebecca.
Oh, I apologize. I'm so sorry
That's
about that.
okay.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I got it now.
Okay.
Thank you. The February minutes are approved. We will now move to Resolution 26-23 and consider requests from the Maryland Port Administration to amend the TIP to accurately reflect funding for the Dundalk Marine Terminal Resiliency and Flood Mitigation Project. Ms. Nicole Condell will introduce the resolution. Nicole?
Hi, good morning. Thank you. We have Resolution 26-23, where MPA is requesting to update funding for the Dundalk Marine Terminal Resiliency and Flood Mitigation Project. This project is currently listed in the TIP, and the ICG is reviewing this project for its exemption status via email this month. Mr. Dominic Skirty is here to present the details of the project, I believe. So I will pass over the mic to Dominic.
Thank you, Nicole. Good morning, everyone. Dominic Skirty. I am the director in the Office of Planning for the Maryland Port Administration. And I'll go briefly over this amendment. If you could forward to the next slide, please. Nothing has changed with the project description. It will provide critical flood improvements at our Dundalk Marine Terminal by installing tide gates or backflow preventers through our storm drains. It will also install a perimeter barrier around the existing terminal to prevent storm surge from overflowing our terminals, as well as constructing a new box culvert. The project will protect the terminal from storm surges that may result in sea level rise and flooding from high intensity short duration rain events. This is part of a longer term resiliency and flood mitigation at all of our terminals. Next slide, please. So attached, you'll see the Dundalk Marine Terminal itself, and As I mentioned, the perimeter barrier C curb will go around the entire perimeter of that. In addition, there'll be a box culvert installed within the terminal. Currently, we rely on a box culvert that is maintained by Baltimore City outside of the terminal. And in addition, there are, I believe, 15 storm drains throughout that terminal where backflow preventers will be installed. Next. So as I mentioned, the project has those 3 phases. All 3 phases are currently under construction, and the project is scheduled for completion in our fiscal 2027. Next, please. So the reason for the change, the current TIP has the estimated project cost at about $51.8 million. The actual updated cost should have read $71.5 million. This was due to an error when entering the data initially for the FY 26 through 29 TIP. In addition, there was project spending anticipated in FY 2025 that was omitted when we calculated that cost, and also that because of a late start due to procurement issues, the project did not start on time. So some of that 2025 funding had to be pushed out into FY 26. Next, the conformity status currently is exempt. And next, with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Dominic. I now ask for a member to move for approval for Resolution 26-23, and then a second.
Annapolis moved.
Thank you, Annapolis.
Queen Anne's County will second.
Thank you, Queen Anne's County. Do any technical members have any questions or comments on this resolution? Are there any public comments or questions in the chat box?
There are currently no comments in the chat box.
Thank you. We will now vote on the approval of the resolution to amend the TIP for this Maryland Port Administration project. Where your name is read, please indicate aye or nay. Rebecca, can you please read down the list of members?
Annapolis.
Aye.
Anne Arundel County.
Aye.
Baltimore City.
Aye.
Baltimore County.
Aye.
Carroll County.
Aye.
Thank you. Harford County.
Aye.
Howard County.
Aye.
Queen Anne's County.
Aye.
And MDOT. Was that a yes for MDOT?
Yes.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rebecca. The resolution has passed. We will now hear a presentation on air quality in the Baltimore region. Ms. Catherine Salerano will present on the intersection between transportation and air quality planning, including the recent clean data determination. Catherine?
Morning. Looks like the presentation isn't in presentation mode on my end. But this is also fine. Okay.
Sorry.
No, you're good. Okay. Good morning. So for those that don't know me, I'm Catherine Salerano and I work in the air quality planning program at MDE. And today I'm going to be presenting on the Clean Air Act and how it relates to transportation processes here at the BRTB. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview. These are the topics we're going to cover today. We'll be looking at the Clean Air Act and specifically the National Ambient Air Quality Standards and how it relates to transportation conformity processes. And then we'll also look specifically at air quality in the Baltimore region, and 2023 wildfires and exceptional events requests, and then finally next steps. Next slide, please. So to start off with the Clean Air Act, the act was passed in 1970, and one very important provision of it was giving EPA the authority and responsibility to set what are called National Ambient Air Quality Standards, or NAAQS, for 6 criteria air pollutants. And these are pollutants that were deemed to be a detriment to public health. So there are 6 on the board, but we're only going to be focusing on ground level ozone. And ozone is pretty unique compared to the others because it's not directly emitted into the air. As shown in the graphic, you have what are nitrogen oxides and volatile organic compounds, or NOx and VOCs, and those are emitted from pollution sources. And then under warm, sunny conditions, they interact and form ozone. So for most of the country, including Maryland, our ozone season is summer. And so the general idea is that EPA promulgates the NAAQS, and then states will submit what are called state implementation plans, or SIPs, to EPA, explaining how they're going to attain or maintain the standard. There are many, many different types of SIPs that fulfill a variety of Clean Air Act requirements. But for the purpose of this presentation, we can just focus on attainment SIPs and maintenance SIPs. Next slide, please. So this is a high-level overview of the general NAAQS process. So the first step is EPA will set the NAAQS for a pollutant. The NAAQS are health-based standards, and they're normally revisited every 5 years to see if they should be updated to reflect new health studies and new information that may have come about. And then once a NAAQS has been set, the timeline of the following steps are all mandated by the Clean Air Act. So moving on to the second step, the state and EPA will evaluate monitoring data to determine what parts of the state are in attainment or non-attainment. And then EPA will make their formal designations. From there, states will submit attainment SIPs for their non-attainment areas, explaining how they're going to attain the standard by the attainment date. And there are a lot of pieces that go into it. And if the area does not attain the standard by the attainment date, it gets bumped up to a higher classification of non-attainment, which you can kind of see on the side. You can go from marginal all the way to extreme. And states can get stuck on step 3 for years over like multiple classifications. However, moving on to the next step, whenever all monitors in the non-attainment area are measuring below the NAAQS, states can request, or EPA can publish on its own, what's called a clean data determination, or a CDD, for the area, which basically means the area is monitoring attainment of the standard. And this allows the state air agency to hit pause on their SIP responsibilities, so long as the area continues to attain the NAAQS. From there, to formally and legally be redesignated to attainment, the first step is submitting a maintenance SIP to EPA that looks 10 years out. And then after another 10 years, the state submits a second maintenance SIP for another 10 years. And then after 20 years, the area is legally reclassified as attainment. Next slide, please. Okay, so jumping back to transportation conformity and tying this into the work at the BRTB, there is an intersection between air quality planning and transportation planning, and this is through the transportation conformity process. And specifically in Clean Air Act, Section 176C, it says, quote, transportation activities will not cause new air quality violations, worsen existing violations, or delay timely attainment of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. So the way this manifests is through transportation conformity analyses, which we do pretty regularly here at the BRTB. And the general process is first a motor vehicle emissions budget is established in an attainment SIP. And as I mentioned, the attainment SIP contains a lot of different parts, but one important part is an emissions inventory, which looks at all the emissions across the state in various sectors. And then specifically for the mobile sector, these mobile budgets are developed for NOx and VOCs. And then a budget is what it sounds like, in that transportation projects in the TIP and LRTP must be modeled, and then whatever emissions come out of that model cannot exceed this budget. And this is a collective effort between MDE, MDOT, and BMC. And I believe BMC will cover this step in a lot more detail in their presentation. Next slide, please. Okay, jumping back to air quality. Now that we have a better idea of the NAAQS and transportation conformity and how it relates, this is a snapshot, I guess, of what's been happening in the Baltimore region over the last 10 years. So to start off, in 2015, EPA promulgated the 2015 ozone NAAQS, which is 70 parts per billion. In 2018, EPA designated the Baltimore region as marginal non-attainment. In 2022, the Baltimore non-attainment area was reclassified to moderate because we did not attain by the deadline. As a result, in 2023, MDE submitted a moderate attainment SIP. And then from that came the mobile budgets for NOx and VOCs, which were deemed adequate by EPA to use in transportation conformity analyses. And so these numbers here on the bottom right, these are the budgets that we've been using the last couple of years and that we're currently using in our current transportation conformity analysis. Next slide, please. And then I think 2023 is when things get complicated, and it all starts with the wildfires in Quebec over the summer of 2023. I'm sure a lot of people here remember that in June and July of that year, there were huge wildfires in Canada that impacted a lot of the United States, including the Baltimore region. And so these wildfire days ended up pushing our design values above the NAAQS. And so in February of 2024, MDE submitted what's called an exceptional events request to specifically exclude those smoke impacted days from the air quality monitoring data set, because it made the difference between monitoring attainment and non-attainment. And there's a mechanism in which wildfire days can be like removed from the data set. However, EPA did not concur with our request in a timely manner, so we voluntarily reclassified the Baltimore non-attainment area to serious in August of 2024. But in our letter to EPA, we asked that they concur with our exceptional events requests so we can still pursue a redesignation. And then like a month later in September, EPA non-concurred with our requests. Additional discussions with EPA were had and additional information from our monitoring program was provided, but not much happened for a while, which you can kind of see in that gap between September 2024 and November 2025. And during that like year-ish long gap is when we started developing our serious attainment SIP. However, in November of 2025, EPA ended up concurring with our request, which did end up removing the high 2023 monitoring values from the data set. And so as a result, in January of this year, EPA ended up publishing a clean data determination for the Baltimore non-attainment area. Next slide, please. And so, like I mentioned before, a clean data determination allows for states to pause on certain attainment SIP elements and instead pivot towards a maintenance plan. So moving forward, that's where we're at now. We are currently developing a maintenance plan to begin this like 20-year long redesignation process. The plan will be based on an inventory of 2023 and then forecasted out to 2038. And then of note for this group is that they will include new mobile budgets. Additionally, we're also coordinating with EPA on any outstanding Clean Air Act requirements that need to be resolved from our previous classifications in order to be redesignated and have our maintenance plan approved. And then lastly, and maybe most importantly, is we're keeping an eye on the 2026 ozone season. We can only keep our clean data determination and work on a maintenance plan if we continue to attain the NAAQS. And I mean, even in this graphic, like you can see that Maryland has come a long way in terms of air quality with the downward trend in the number of days over 70 parts per billion each year. However, again, ozone is a seasonal pollutant, so this summer will be interesting, especially in the context of this current federal administration. There have been a lot of changes and repeals and regulations from EPA, which is important in this context because ozone is seasonal, but it's also regional, meaning it can travel hundreds of miles from where it's formed. So even if Maryland is like upholding our control practices and technology and is doing its job in regulating its pollution sources, we're still very heavily impacted by other states' practices. So while we're working on all of our plans and trying to get redesignated, we will have to keep an eye on what happens this ozone season and adapt accordingly. Next slide, please. And I think that's all I have for today. Yeah, thank you for your time. I know there are a lot of moving parts to this puzzle and jumping from like transportation to air quality, but I'm happy to answer any questions now, or my email is on the screen if you'd like to just shoot me an email.
Thank you, Catherine. Are there any questions? Miss Anna Marshall will share the conformity methodology. Anna?
Hello, let me just pull up my slides. Can everyone see this new BRTB slide deck?
No.
Oh, okay. Let me just stop sharing and reshare. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine, for introducing the air quality overview in Maryland and then also transportation conformity. I'm going to go into a little bit more details about transportation conformity in the Baltimore region. So as Catherine was saying, I'll just go through these points pretty fast here. We're currently in a serious non-attainment area for the criteria pollutant ozone, and the EPA sets the NAAQS for each criteria pollutant. And air quality conformity is required for MPOs in a non-attainment or maintenance area of a NAAQS standard. And the BRTB demonstrates that the TIP and LRTP conform to the motor vehicle emission budgets that are in the MDE's state implementation plans. And this year's conformity is looking at the 2027 to 2030 TIP and Resilience 2050, the current long-range transportation plan. The most recent conformity rule, amended by the EPA in April 2012, outlines the MPO requirements to conduct conformity analyses. As part of the BRTB committees, we have an interagency consultation group, and the ICG meets monthly to discuss conformity methods and assumptions for the next TIP and the LRTP. We have voting members, including MDE, MDOT, and the BRTB, and participating members from our federal partners at the EPA, FHWA, and FTA. And the methodology letter is developed in January prior to the conformity analysis and submitted to our federal partners in February. And I'm going to go into a little bit about the methodology letter. So the point of this letter, it outlines the proposed technical work tasks, procedures, and assumptions to be used for conducting the mandated air quality conformity determination. And MDE, as I was saying, sets the motor vehicle emission budgets. And the most recent SIP is from 2023. That's the moderate attainment SIP that Catherine was mentioning. And ICG determines if those budgets will be continued to be used in the current transportation conformity analysis. And as part of the analysis, BMC then applies a regional travel demand forecasting model to different horizon year scenarios to assess anticipated transportation project speeds and travel impacts on air quality. So the current moderate attainment SIP has the budgets for NOx emissions at 35.26 tons per day and VOC emissions at 17.47 tons per day. And again, these are the precursor pollutants that contribute to ozone, especially during the summer season when it is warmer weather. So as part of the approach, at BMC, we have the travel demand forecasting modeling, and we look at socioeconomic inputs, including the round 10 forecasts through 2050. This looks at employment, housing, and population. We also have the InSight model, which is the activity-based model. And this simulates household and personal travel choices, including transportation mode, destination, and purpose, like commuting to work or school or whatever you're traveling for, groceries. And it also has a freight model to simulate truck and commercial vehicle trips. The projects that are included in this model are the non-exempt and regionally significant projects. And so specifically for transportation conformity, each project in the TIP is categorized as non-exempt or exempt from air quality conformity. And non-exempt projects are ones that might increase capacity on a roadway or are not directly related to emission reductions, for example. The next step, we look at the MOVES model, which is an EPA model called the Motor Vehicle Emissions Simulator. And this simulates emissions, and we work with MDE on this. BMC and MDE work together. And air quality impacts are measured for certain horizon years. The MOVES model estimates emission outputs from implementing the non-exempt and regionally significant transportation projects. So some of the inputs are the InSight and socioeconomic data from the travel demand model here at BMC. Vehicle miles traveled of the whole region, and also vehicle emissions factors, which include different factors like averages based on the age distributions of vehicles, vehicle activity like speeds, operating modes, starts and idling, different temperatures, inspection, maintenance, and anti-tampering programs, and average gasoline fuel properties in a calendar year. So those are some factors that are used in the MOVES model. And then after that is run, the output of the MOVES model determines whether the transportation plans and programs are consistent with Maryland SIP goals. And if the outputs are lower than the budget set in the SIP, this means that the transportation plans demonstrate conformity with the ozone NAAQS. Just a look at the air quality conformity schedule that we run through every year. So starting in January is when we kind of review the methodology with ICG, and then in February, ICG approves the methodology letter, and this is what determines the start of conformity. And now it's March and we'll be receiving the 2027 to 2030 TIP projects from sponsoring agencies. And then ICG will review the projects and determine whether they are exempt or not exempt from air quality conformity. And then the modeling team will prepare 2026, 35, 45, and 2050 TIP and plan scenario travel and emissions estimates. That's kind of what I was saying for the horizon year testing. And then this modeling process will be analyzed and approved by the ICG in May. And then that data set will then be included in the conformity determination report as part of the TIP and the long range transportation plan that will be set for approval in July by the BRTB. So just to wrap up here, so air quality in the Baltimore region, we've been demonstrating transportation conformity to the ozone NAAQS for the past couple of years. And as we saw on Catherine's slides, that air quality in general has been improving in Maryland. And if trends continue to show improvement, we could demonstrate attainment of the ozone standard and move into a maintenance area and work on a maintenance plan instead of a non-attainment plan in the future. So that's pretty exciting for our region. And these tables are showing from the previous conformity season last year, just we have the conformity budgets for each pollutant, NOx and VOCs. And these were the results of the transportation modeling and the MOVES output, showing that each horizon year was measuring below the budget. So as a result, the conformity transportation analysis demonstrates attainment. And I think that's all I have. Let me know if you have any questions. I know it's pretty dense and there's always moving parts, so happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. Are there any questions? Hearing none, we will now move to an overview of MDOT performance reporting. Ms. Toria Lassiter will present on the 2026 Annual Attainment Report and the upcoming Biennial Transportation Performance Management Report. Toria?
Here I am. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. And I'm sharing my screen. Okay. Good morning. I'm Toria Lassiter. I'm Chief of the Innovative Planning and Performance Division in SHA's Office of Planning and Preliminary Engineering. And as Angelica said, today I'm going to talk about some of the performance reporting we do at MDOT and what it really means and how it actually informs, the work that we do and our decision making. Starting with the annual attainment report. You may be familiar with the 2050 Maryland Transportation Plan or the Playbook. And the Playbook is MDOT's long-range plan that outlines MDOT's vision to provide safe, reliable, accessible, equitable, and sustainable transportation options to Marylanders across the state in our multimodal transportation system. And our goals are specifically to enhance safety and security, deliver system quality, serve communities, and support the economy, and promote environmental stewardship. And so the annual attainment report for transportation performance, also called the AR, is the data-driven vehicle by which we track progress toward our achievement of the goals in the MTP. And so in it, we evaluate performance in the areas of safety, system quality, economic growth, and environmental stewardship to guide investment decisions. Simply put, it is the report card on performance of our multimodal network. We identify successes, challenges, and strategies for improvement. And we're so serious about making sure that it's a real document that we actually use. We added some 20 plus measures to the attainment report and our cache of measures in 2024, including the areas of EV and fleet conversion, state of good repair for critical assets, access to transit jobs and essential services. I want to note before I get into this that it's the 2026 report just came out, but the reporting for this report was done in 2020, calendar year 2025. And so kind of the focus of the data, actual observed conditions is calendar year 2024. So at MDOT, safety is our number one priority. And so we track safety performance. And the best news is that the rate of fatalities is trending downwards from the pandemic high in 2020. And the number of fatalities decreased between 2023 and 2024. I don't have final 2025 numbers, mostly because 2025 just ended yesterday in the grand scheme of time. So we'll see what the Maryland Highway Safety Office publishes when they have. In terms of bike ped safety, so that was kind of vehicle related stats. And in terms of bike ped safety, between 2023 and 2024, both the number of bike and pedestrian fatalities decreased, which is a win. Just touching on some of the measures, reliability. Customers want reliable travel times from traveling on our roadway system. And so we have annual person hours of delay, travel time reliability on our network, truck hours of delay and reliability on our network. And these measures provide customers with a gauge by which they can assess travel time reliability in general on our system. And so customers can plan their trips better and make more efficient use of their time. And if the system is unreliable, people and trucks will have to account for additional buffers to reach their destinations on time. And this measure provides MDOT with an opportunity to identify the most unreliable segments or bottlenecks and the underlying reasons. Some of you may be familiar with our mobility report, which specifically identifies those corridors that have, kind of identifies corridor level performance when it comes to reliability. And utilizing travel time reliability positions the agency to provide appropriate mitigation measures. So we saw a gradual decrease in person hours of delay. Gradual increase, did I say that? Person hours of delay, continuing from previous years. And, there's work to be done, but we're doing things at SHA, for example, like coordinating with our Office of Traffic and Safety and District 7 to implement low-cost countermeasures in fall 2025 to significantly reduce excessive queuing and congestion during the AM peak period at the I-70 and Maryland 32, Maryland 144 junction. MDOT is continuing to employ TDM, traffic demand management strategies in the Baltimore area to relieve congestion, including leading the Commuter Choice Maryland initiative, which encourages alternatives to solo driving. And we have the Guaranteed Ride Home program for registered commuters. MDOT also added a resilience measure, a state of good repair measure. So the resilience measure evaluates state roadways or highways and state fixed guideway transit lines using the Climate Ready Action Boundary, the CRAB layer, we call it, which was mapping developed for Maryland to determine the kind of determine how much of our network is and our assets are susceptible to flooding and storm surge under future conditions. And by future conditions, the layer kind of estimates where, if you assumed that the current sea elevation was to be raised by 3 foot, where would that boundary spread out to, and therefore what would be inundated as a result. And so this is a new measure. So the initial reporting year sets the baseline so that MDOT can better understand the risk to its roadways and transit lines. And this information will inform where to deploy resiliency measures and design of highways and rail projects to mitigate damage from flooding. Also, we have backlog, state of good repair backlog reporting. So MDOT has identified 7 critical assets. And in FY 2025, we had a backlog of about 4.3 billion compared to 3.8 billion in 2024, FY 2024. So as our asset management program continues to mature at MDOT, we gain better insight into the condition of our assets, which leads into MDOT identifying additional needs to maintain a state of good repair. We have published an updated tactical asset management plan, which outlines the steps that we're taking to deliver the goals outlined in our SAMP, State Asset Management Plans. MTA would be able to address over 90% of its state of good repair needs through 2023 with increased revenues. MPA programmed 64% of its FY 26 to FY 2031 budget for system preservation projects. This project includes the Fairfield Marine Terminal project that Dominic Skirty spoke to earlier, which is also a resilience project, right? So kind of resilience, addressing resilience and building for resilience leads to, or, furthers our efforts to achieve a state of good repair. And another measure related to our objective to, I think I'm missing yeah, maybe. We have a VMT measure. Here we go. In 2024, our Attainment Report Advisory Committee, which is kind of the guiding committee on, setting goals, setting targets for our attainment report, they set a goal to decrease VMT per capita by 10% by 2030 and by 20% by 2050 from 2019 baseline conditions. And this is in alignment with the objective to minimize fossil fuel consumption, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and improve air quality. And that also aligns with the Climate Solutions Now Act requirement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And so the VMT is tracking traffic trends and travel demand utilizing Maryland roadways and VMT per capita. The changes in VMT per capita are an indicator of access to alternative forms of transportation and associated environmental and roadway system impacts by controlling for increase and decrease in total state population. So we see that VMT decreased from 2023 to 2024. And so here, another measure related to that objective to minimize fossil fuel consumption and reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve air quality. And a contributor to the reduction in VMT is the number of employee partners in statewide traffic demand management programs. And so participation in the programs has steadily increased during the past year. Employers have been added through the Maryland Commuter Tax Credit Registration, Baltimore Commutes Ride Together Rewards Incentive Program, and other outreach efforts. And as I mentioned, the MDOT has the Commuter Choice Maryland program, and we had announced the Ride Together Rewards program. And lastly, related to this is the percentage of electric vehicles on roads in Maryland, reducing traffic, transportation related greenhouse gas emissions from on-road mobile sources. And so increasing the percentage of EVs reduces the amount of VMT from congestion engine vehicles, supporting that overall goal of reducing transportation-related GHG emissions. And Maryland has a goal of 1.1 million EVs registered by 2030. 30,876 EVs were registered in Maryland in the 12-month period between July 2024 and July 2025, representing 28% growth in the number of EVs on the road during this time period. And EVs now represent nearly 3% of all registered vehicles in Maryland. And so measuring what matters and how it shapes our work. So we have the Maryland State Freight Plan. Let me step back. So the work that we do to track performance at the state level and develop and implement strategies that move the needle on performance towards achieving those goals in the MTP actively informs planning level, project level, investment decision making, and examples of plans that support this are the State Freight Plan, which is a 4-year plan. It's a federal requirement that every state develops a state freight plan and examines existing and projected freight mobility and truck parking conditions, identifies policy, positions, strategies, and freight projects and investments to improve freight movement efficiency and safety. So the last update was in 2022, and the next one is this year in 2026, actually. We also have the PSAP, the Pedestrian Safety Action Plan, provides an overview of existing conditions throughout the state, identifies areas of need, recommends strategies to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety in those areas using data to identify and prioritize solutions. And this directly contributes to, our effort to improve safety for bicyclists and pedestrians. And so we're advancing pedestrian and bicycle infrastructure projects through the PSAP. And in FY 2025, MDOT invested $10.2 million to design and construct new sidewalks and pedestrian facilities along various corridors, including Maryland 214, Central Avenue in Anne Arundel County, US 1, Washington Boulevard in Howard County, and Maryland 7, Delaware Avenue in Elkton, Maryland. We also we have the TAMP, the Maryland TAMP. It's another 4-year plan. It's a federal requirement that every state develops this 4-year plan for NHS bridges and pavements, where we report our NHS inventory on behalf of the whole state, all state NHS owners. So we report inventory, condition, our life cycle management strategies for maintenance, our kind of approach to our state of good repair goals and our approach to achieving those goals. We identify risks to the infrastructure and risk management strategies, and we identify our kind of investment approach to get to the state of good repair or meet our 2-year and 4-year intermediate goals. And so BRTB in the Resilience 2050 plan identified performance measures that are much aligned with what MDOT has identified. And we work with BRTB on the development of that TAMP. We work to identify what those state of good repair goals are. We report on what the inventory and condition is. We engage you all. I think recently a survey went out to identify risks and the impact of those risks to our network. I'll say in the kind of freight realm, we do a lot. I know the BRTB has a freight movement task force, which aligns with our efforts to improve freight mobility and safety throughout the state, and certainly, obviously, in the Baltimore region. Critical urban and and rural freight corridor designations, we worked with BRTB to identify what those designations should be within the Baltimore region, the urbanized area in the Baltimore region. And the important thing about that is we use the formula funding from the feds, the National Highway Freight Program funds, NHFP funds. Those funds are applied to any projects along corridors on the primary highway freight system and the non-primary highway freight system, and along critical urban and critical rural freight corridors. So it's literally, we have to do this work together in order to apply funding to these locations. I know you've got a truck parking study going on, and so we're working hand in hand on many of these things. Performance reporting. So I talked about the TAMP, which is a form of performance reporting, but the TAMP is a 4-year document. We have an annual document called the TAMP Consistency Report, where we're required to report on the condition of bridges and pavements on the NHS on behalf of all NHS owners. We have to report on the condition on an annual basis and what had been invested on those bridge and pavement assets on the NHS. And so we reach out to our MPOs, our NPO NHS partner owners to get condition and not conditional, MDOT collects that, but to get kind of investment data. And so that actual work should start very soon, quite honestly. So you'll be hearing from John Privet pretty soon. We also have a biennial report called the Performance Management Form. Well, we submit a performance management form, and by we I mean MDOT. Every state DOT is required to, on a biennial basis, submit a report to FHWA, which documents our 2- and 4-year targets and the kind of prescribed performance areas, and our progress towards achieving those goals. But I'll get into that right now. So there's the Transportation Performance Management Program, a federal program, and this is where we see, and I think MDOT and BRTB has done a great job of aligning the federal measures with the state measures, with the regional measures, and we kind of are on the same page about what we're working, what we're looking to see improvement, how we're looking to see improvement, where we're aligning measures with the plans, with our actual work. I think we've done a good job of that. So under this TPM program, we're required to set targets in 3 performance areas. TPM 1, which isn't shown, is an annual reporting for safety measures, including fatalities, serious injuries, and the rates of both, and non-motorized serious injuries. TPM 2 and 3 cover infrastructure conditions, so bridge and pavements on the NHS, highway and freight reliability metrics, congestion metrics, and emissions or air quality measures. And so this is what's reported biennially. And here in 2026, we're required to submit a report. And so we'll be actually submitting 3 reports this year. By we, I mean MDOT. SHA specifically leads that effort. We submit a full performance period progress report. So TPM kind of follows a 4-year performance period. The first being 2018 to 2022. That was called the first performance period. The second performance period was from 2022 to 2025. And this year, we're starting the third performance period. And so what's required is a full performance period progress report where we report on whether we achieved our 4-year targets that were set during that TPM 2 period. I'm sorry, not TPM 2, that second performance period. Did we meet those targets or not? We're also required to submit a report setting new 2 and 4 year targets for the period between calendar year 26 and calendar year 2029. And then we have to submit an additional report. It's literally called additional reporting for unmet targets. So we did not meet one of the reliability targets during the mid-performance period. So in 2024, we had to report on whether we met our 2-year targets or not. And it was our opportunity to adjust our 4-year targets based on what we thought was feasible and what we had expected, generally based on expectations of reasonably available funding for reliability. Anything that had occurred or that we think may occur or have an impact on reliability. It's our opportunity to, based on what we know, should we change our 4-year targets? And so here we set new 2 and 4 year targets. And that additional reporting, we have to explain kind of why did we not meet the target and what would we have done to meet the target. Which, given that we're now at the 2-year, the requirement is that you either submit the report in 6 months or at the next milestone report period, which we're doing this milestone report period. So it's kind of moot. We can explain what we did. And then the MPO is responsible for developing a CMAQ performance plan, where you report 2 and 4 year targets for traffic congestion measures and emissions reduction measures. And you give a baseline assessment of current performance and a description of projects and how they'll contribute to achieving those projects. I'm sorry, that performance, those targets. And so just a broad summary of TPM in action between 26 and 27. There's the annual requirement to set safety target. The state has to set a target, and all the MPOs have to set a regional target. And that is set 180 days. The requirement is that the MPO sets it at 180 days from the state's establishment of a target. So the state establishes a target August 31st, 2026, and then the MPO has 180 days from then. And BRTB has already met the 2026 requirement for MDOT's August 2025 submission or establishment of a state target. For CMAQ emissions, those emissions measures are NOx and VOC emissions, and 3 MPOs are required to set to set targets and submit a CMAQ performance plan, which includes BRTB. And those are submit at the same time as the MDOT submission. So MDOT is required to submit on behalf of the MPOs this report. So that means we'd have to work together, SHA and BRTB, to have that plan done in advance so that we have it in time to submit by October 1st. CMAQ congestion measures, we set a unified target for the BRTB region. So that includes Baltimore and Aberdeen. We set a unified target together, and that gets reported in the MDOT report. Infrastructure condition and reliability, that is also set by the MPOs, and you have 180 days from the establishment or reporting of the state's targets to adopt your own. And so we report that in this October 1st submission. And so 180 days from that is March 20th, 2027. And so this is kind of intertwined with the TAMP. I talked about the TAMP, which is being done out of our asset management office at SHA. But the thing is, the TPM program is the program under which we set the targets. And the TAMP is the vehicle by which we communicate the 2 and 4 year bridge and pavement targets. So it's reported in both the TAMP and our biennial report. And so essentially that team and my team has to work together with the MPOs to set these targets and report them. And so where we are here is, well, not January 1st, but March. And so our report is due in 2026. And then 2 years from that is the mid-performance period progress report. And then 2 years from that is the full performance report. And safety targets every year in between. And the state TAMP is due December 2026. And so that means, kind of like I went over, but visualization of it is, set. You've already adopted your MPO target, your safety targets from the 2025 state establishment. We're here. We're working on the full. We're about to engage the MPOs to work on the full performance period progress reports and the baseline reports. And in between is the adoption of safety targets by the state. But after is the MPO's adoption of safety and reliability and infrastructure condition targets. And so what that means is, data available on the left side, the kind of dark data icon, if you will, is when we expect that we would have the data associated with these measures. So where we could collect that kind of actual performance data. Emissions data comes out, just came out for state access, but the MPOs cannot access it yet. But our MDOT's kind of air quality staff will be reaching out to communicate what we're looking at in terms of state emissions targets and state emissions data. We have preliminary results for congestion and reliability measures, and Bridge, the State Highway Office of Structures, submits their National Bridge Index, NBI submission on the 15th of this month. And that is when, shortly after that, they should be able to draft internal targets, and then they need to get approval of those targets from their leadership, from our SHA leadership, and then we would seek to communicate what those targets are with, to the MPOs. But we'd be looking to finalize those targets by June. And so basically for reliability reliability and bridge, we think we'll finalize those targets in around June. For pavement, there's the submission of interstate, the pavement submission, federal submission of pavement data is due for the interstate is due in April, and then for non-interstate is due in June. And so we think that we would finalize those targets in July and in August. And then for emissions and congestion, we think we would maybe have final targets finalized on the state side by May. And so we'd have to work with BRTB to identify, especially for emissions and congestion targets. We work together to put together an internal schedule for how, when you all would need to have adopted or identified what your targets would be and what and put together your CMAQ performance plans and what that kind of adoption schedule would look like in order for us to meet our October 1st deadline. And so just for some just a glance at preliminary results, we can talk about reliability. So something big that happened was the collapse of the FSK bridge. And so clearly we, have to account, and that was during the mid-performance period progress reporting submission. And so that was our opportunity to adjust our 4-year targets. Well, if that, if that part of the network is out of commission, what is the anticipated effect on reliability? So we looked at I think maybe a couple of months of what that change in reliability was after that date. And then we forecasted out what that kind of shift was. We forecasted it out to make new assumptions about what reliability would be. And therefore we chose to adjust our 4-year targets. So as far as the state target was for interstate level travel time reliability, we adjusted the target and we did end up meeting our 4-year target. We adjusted the non-interstate level of travel time reliability, and it appears that we met that target. For truck travel time reliability, we adjusted the target, and right now we're at 1.89. I'm sorry, we changed it to 1.89, the index of 1.89, but the results are showing up as 1.9, and we're hoping that maybe because this is a preliminary result, we'll get we'll end up at 1.89. But we still, I think what this shows is that we our approach to adjusting the targets was sound, and we found ourselves, doing better or kind of meeting what the actual performance is. So one of the joint measures that we set with BRTB is the urban area congestion peak hours of excessive delay, PHED. We did choose to adjust the target, but it does not appear that we've met the target. Now, if there's anything to glean from it, there are no penalties for not meeting the target. We just have to report what that was and potentially, what do we think were contributors to not meeting the target, but there's no actual penalty. We adjusted the target for Aberdeen, and we did better than what that target was. Another joint measure is the non-single occupancy vehicle mode share, and we don't have the data. So one of the things was there was the effort to the census, when they changed this, we did the census and they had census results. They had locked this metric, and they're retaining at least 2024, reporting in 2024, they're keeping the performance at that same level and not changing it because the census results hadn't been finalized. And so we don't yet know what their ruling will be regarding what performance we're going to be held to. And so here's just what the target was, but we'll have to find out what we're held to when it comes to performance. The same for Aberdeen. And that is it. Thank you very much. I hope that was helpful and informative. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Tori. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If there are no questions, we will move on to our UPWP updates. Mr. Tim Briggs will provide an update on the Coordinated Public Transit Human Services Transportation Plan. Tim?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm gonna give Zach a minute to pull up the slides. Not sure what's going on with my camera this morning. Oh, there we go. Yes, so you may recall that I provided an update in December. We talked about the purpose of the plan, which is to identify the transportation needs of individuals with disabilities, older adults, and people with low incomes. And sorry about that. Providing strategies to meet the local needs. So since that time, MTA has solicited feedback on the recommended strategies for the regions and completed public outreach sessions for the plan. The draft plan is now available for review and comment through March 6, 2026. And I believe Zach shared the link to the plan with all of the technical committee members for you to review and add comments. And the final plan will be presented to the BRTB at the May meeting. And so if you don't get a chance to review it in detail, I'll be providing a summary of the content. And then after that will be a vote to adopt the plan by the board. So those are the next steps in the planning process for the Coordinated Human Services Transportation Plan. If you have any questions or want to get more into the details, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you, Tim. We will now have Zach Kaufman to provide an update on Region Next 2055. Zach?
Morning. So, as Angie said, I'm going to provide an update on Region Next 2055. This is the next long-range transportation plan for the Baltimore region. We anticipate adopting that plan in mid-2027, but there's a lot of work going on right now. So last month, I presented proposed goals and strategies as well as proposed project scoring methodology in detail. So we are seeking technical committee consensus so that we can proceed with the call for projects. So we're asking that you take a look, review, and contact us by Tuesday, March 17th. If you have any comments or concerns on those proposed goals and strategies and proposed project scoring updates. I've linked my presentations from last month, the project scoring updates for roadway and transit projects, as well as the active transportation scoring methodology, as well as the proposed goals and strategies. So take a look and please let us know if there's anything that would preclude you from approving us to move forward with the call for projects in April. All right, next. Also related, wanted to share that we have launched a website for the next LRTP, Region Next 2055. We have a BMC website that has kind of a summary of the timeline, the process, kind of the planning products leading up to that, and also links the proposed goals and strategies and the project scoring methodology. We also have set up a public input webpage that might not have been made public yet, but it will be very, very soon. And finally, looking at some next steps. So, assuming that you all are okay with us moving forward with the call for projects, we'll integrate any comments that you might have on the project scoring and the goals and strategies, but we will work over the next month to update the project submittal form for roadway and transit projects. We also have a submittal form now for active transportation projects. We're going to work on some pilot scoring for a few mock projects for testing. And then we anticipate presenting resolutions on the goals and strategies and project scoring in May. But at the same time, we'll be moving forward with a call for projects starting on or around April 1st, extending through June. So we'll be looking for, your roadway, transit, as well as standalone active transportation projects to be submitted for the LRTP during that period. We will be reaching out with guidance with your prior project submittal forms, so you can kind of remind yourselves what your submissions for the last LRTP were. And we'll also be holding some kind of open sessions where you can ask questions, etc., if you have any, particularly because we're adding this set of standalone active transportation project submittals. Yeah, so start to think about that. We'll be gathering materials and we will be in touch. Once the call for projects ends, we will promptly transition to estimating the cost of projects. We'll work with state agencies on that, as well as scoring projects. And that's anticipated in summer of this year. Okay. That is my contact information. That's all I have on the Region Next update.
Thank you, Zach. Moving on to other business. The next technical committee meeting will be virtual on Tuesday, April 7th. Is there any other business to come before the committee? Hearing none, Ms. Cindy Birch will share information on the upcoming Lifesavers Conference in Baltimore. Cindy?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I just want to let you know, it's been mentioned in some of our other subcommittee meetings. I'm not sure if it's been brought to this group just yet, but there is a international conference held every year for many decades. I'm not even sure what number it is, called the Lifesavers Conference on roadway safety. And it brings together a lot of different safety practitioners, from child passenger safety technicians to planners to engineers to first responders, a lot of law enforcement, a lot of highway safety office staff, and all the federal partners out of DOT that focus on roadway safety. So Federal Highway, NHTSA, Federal Motor Carrier, they all have a big presence there. And this year we're holding it in Baltimore. It's going to be held at the Convention Center downtown. The main conference, the main set of workshops is Sunday, April 19th to Tuesday, the 21st. Saturday, there's a series of trainings prior to the actual conference workshops. And we actually have some good representation, not just from the state, but from the region. So she's not here today, but Eileen Singleton at BMC has been organizing. There's going to be a traffic incident management training on those Saturday workshops. It's the nationally certified 4-hour course for TIM training. And then I believe it's on Monday afternoon, there's going to be a TIM workshop that Eileen has been putting together with some state and local partners to just talk about traffic incident management, a lot of the advances we've made here in the region, in the state, from the perspective of roadway responders or pedestrians too, because they're outside the vehicle doing their job, trying to secure the scene, and then they're also at risk during that time. So it's a wide range of information, a lot of different tracks. There's a safe system approach track, impaired driving, distracted driving, pedestrian, bicycle, and micromobility, things like that. So if you're interested, I would strongly encourage you to attend. I've been going for many years, and it's a great place to also network, as well as just see what a lot of other states are doing when it comes to their safety planning, as well as their ideas. A lot of talk about local strategic safety plans, Vision Zero, safe system approach, all of that. So the web address there gives you information about the details of it, the location, registration, the different workshops. The schedule is already posted, so you can see exactly what's going to be presented. And if you have any questions, you can always let me know. Eileen and I will both be there from BMC. And like I said, we'll have a lot of other partners from across the region. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. Now we will have Zach share information on the FY 2027 planning budget comment period. Zach?
Yeah, a couple of items. First, I wanted to note that we have received several comments on the fiscal 2027 UPWP that is open for public comment through March 8th. Most are regionally oriented, and BMC will draft responses to those. We will share any locally oriented comments with members for response once the comment period closes. And of course, we'll share all draft responses with members soon after the comment period closes. And finally, I wanted to share an interesting opportunity from the Eastern Transportation Coalition. They have launched a mileage-based user fee pilot project across their member states. I think you probably know, but this type of fee charges drivers based on how many miles they drive. There's no cost to participate. Participants wouldn't have to pay any fees, of course. The pilot is just a way to allow participants to see how much they would spend under a mileage-based user fee structure. And there are some additional details and the registration link on this flyer if you happen to be interested. Finally, I wanted to remind members that the April Technical Committee will be virtual. Usually that meeting is in person, but there's a conference room conflict. So again, the April 7th meeting will be virtual.
Thank you, Zach. Hearing no further business, I ask for a motion to close the meeting.
Dan at MDOT, I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
Thank you, Dan from MDOT.
Harford County will second.
Thank you, Sam from Harford County. Thank you, everyone, for attending.